Hi, children. Welcome to a wonderful Bible adventure that will fill your hearts with courage and joy. Today, I'm going to tell you the amazing true story of a young shepherd boy who did something incredible. He wasn't strong or tall like a soldier, but he had something more powerful: faith in God. This brave boy faced a huge giant that scared an entire army, but he didn't run away. He believed that with God on his side, no enemy was too big and no battle was too hard. That's right, children. We're about to hear the story of David and Goliath, one of the most thrilling tales in the Bible. You'll see how courage, faith, and trust in God can turn the smallest person into a great hero. So get ready to travel back in time and meet the fearless David, who stood up to a giant when no one else would. Are you excited? Because this story will show you that with God, all things are possible, even defeating a giant with just one stone. Let's jump into the action and discover how one small boy changed everything with his faith in the Lord. A long time ago, in a land of hills and battlefields, the Israelites were in great trouble. Camped on one side of a valley, they were terrified of the fierce Philistines on the other. Every day, a monstrous warrior named Goliath, over 9 feet tall and covered in shining armor, stepped out to mock them. His voice thundered through the valley, daring anyone to fight him, but no one was brave enough to accept the challenge. Even King Saul's promises of riches and marriage couldn't move the scared soldiers. For 40 days, Goliath's insults echoed and fear filled every heart. Then came David, a young shepherd boy, small and unknown, sent only to deliver food. But when he heard Goliath mocking God's people, something stirred within him. With unshakable faith and a bold heart, David declared, "I will fight this Philistine." Laughed at and scolded by others, David stood firm. He trusted not in size or sword, but in the living God. And that trust was about to change everything.
I am Goliath. Send someone to fight me if you dare.
Goliath was a giant, over 9 feet tall, built like a fortress, and armored like a war machine. His bronze helmet gleamed, and his heavy chest armor was like a wall of metal no one else could carry. In one hand, he held a massive spear as thick as a weaver's beam with a deadly iron tip. A giant sword hung at his side, and a shield bearer walked ahead of him. Every day he marched into the valley, roaring threats with a thunderous voice that echoed through the hills. He mocked Israel, challenged their courage, and dared someone, anyone, to face him. For 40 days he repeated this, terrifying even the bravest soldiers. None dared to step forward, paralyzed by fear and doubt. But what no one expected was that help was coming. Not in the form of a warrior, but a boy with unshakable faith. But even though Goliath shouted and challenged them every day, not a single Israelite soldier dared to step forward. The men who had trained for battle, who carried swords and shields, now stood frozen in fear, unable to move. Each time Goliath's voice boomed across the valley, their courage melted away like ice in the sun. They whispered among themselves, hoping someone else would volunteer, but no one ever did. The sight of Goliath's towering figure and his gleaming armor was enough to crush their confidence. They thought, how can any man defeat such a giant? It would be a hopeless battle. Even the rewards promised by King Saul couldn't convince anyone to face the terrifying Philistine. Fear wrapped itself around the army like a heavy blanket, weighing down their hearts and stealing their strength. They looked at one another with worried eyes, wondering how long they could survive without a champion. In their minds, the giant was already unbeatable. And so, day after day, they stayed silent and still. But far from the battlefield, in the quiet hills of Bethlehem, there lived a young boy named David. David wasn't a soldier, nor was he trained in the ways of war. He was just a humble shepherd. Each day he led his father's sheep through grassy fields, guiding them gently and protecting them from harm. Though his work seemed simple, it was filled with responsibility, courage, and care. David spent many quiet hours watching the sheep, thinking about God and singing songs of praise from his heart. He carried a harp and made music under the open sky, pouring out his love for God in every note and word. He had faced dangers too. Wild animals like lions and bears had tried to attack the flock, but David fought them off bravely. With nothing more than a sling and his faith, he defended the sheep with steady hands and a fearless spirit. Though young and unnoticed by most, David had already proven that courage doesn't depend on size or strength. His heart belonged to God, and that made him stronger than any warrior the world could see.
I trust in God. He helps me be brave.
One day, a young shepherd named David was sent by his father to visit his older brothers, who were serving in the Israelite army. He packed food for them, bread and cheese, and made the long journey to the battlefield with a heart full of care. David was not a soldier, he was just a boy who spent most of his time watching over sheep in the quiet hills. But as he arrived at the camp and greeted his brothers, something caught his attention that changed everything. Across the valley, the booming voice of Goliath thundered once again, mocking Israel and daring someone to fight him. David paused, surprised and troubled by what he heard, as the giant insulted God's people without fear. The soldiers nearby listened quietly, their faces full of fear, but David's face showed something different, disbelief and courage. He couldn't understand why no one had answered Goliath's challenge, why everyone seemed so afraid. To him, it wasn't just about a giant. It was about defending God's honor and trusting him completely. That moment stirred something bold inside David's heart, a spark that would soon lead to an unforgettable act of faith.
Why is no one fighting this giant? We have God on our side.
But he's too big, too strong. David wasn't afraid, even though everyone else around him trembled at the sound of Goliath's voice. With calm confidence, he made his way to King Saul's tent, surrounded by nervous soldiers and doubtful stares. Unlike the warriors who had been trained for battle, David had never fought in a war, but his heart was full of faith. He stood before the king not with pride or boasting, but with a firm belief that God would help him. David looked Saul in the eyes and said boldly, "Let no one lose heart because of this Philistine." He continued, "Your servant will go and fight him," shocking everyone who heard his words. The king was surprised. This was just a young shepherd, not a soldier. But David spoke with such courage. He told Saul about how he had fought off lions and bears while protecting his sheep, never running away. David believed that the same God who saved him before would save him again, even against a giant. And so, with that unshakable faith, David stepped forward to do what no trained soldier had dared to do.
I will fight Goliath. God has helped me before, and he'll help me now.
But you're just a boy.
I protected my sheep from lions and bears. God kept me safe. He will keep me safe now too.
When young David bravely offered to fight Goliath, King Saul was surprised but wanted to help. So he offered David his royal armor. The armor was made for a grown man, heavy and large, shining with metal plates, and designed for protection in serious battle. David tried to put it on, but as soon as he slipped his arms through the sleeves, it became clear it didn't fit at all. The helmet slid down over his eyes, the chest plate hung too low, and the sword was far too big for his hand. He could barely walk in it, stumbling and wobbling like a child wearing a grown-up's clothes for the first time. Though the armor was strong, it wasn't made for someone like David, a young shepherd used to moving freely. David looked at the king and said honestly, "I can't wear this. I'm not used to it. It will only slow me down." Instead of relying on armor or weapons of war, David chose to trust in the tools he knew best. He took off the armor and laid it aside, showing everyone that his strength didn't come from metal, but from faith. With nothing but a staff in his hand, a sling over his shoulder, and confidence in God, David stepped forward to face the giant.
I can't wear this. I'll fight the way I know.
Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?
You come with a sword, but I come with the power of God.
David took a stone, put it in his sling, spun it around, whoosh, and let it fly.
Oof, thud. He falls down.
The stone hit Goliath right on the forehead, and he fell down. Boom! David had won. Everyone was amazed. David defeated the giant, not with a sword, but with faith in God.
When God is on your side, you don't have to be afraid.
Let's remember what we learned today. Trust God even when you're scared. God can use anyone, even children. Faith is stronger than fear. Thanks for joining us for the story of David and Goliath. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends.
Be brave and trust in God.
See you next time on Joyful Bible Story Time, where we learn, laugh, and grow in God's love. Bye for now.